UCSI. UCSI iMechie Student Chapter is delighted to have such a collaboration with elite techno groups of India. So before we start our first day, here are some instructions to make sure the talk goes as smooth as it could be. Firstly, I would request all of the students to mute their mics when you're not talking. Secondly, please be aware of your surroundings to avoid any disturbance when you're speaking. Thirdly, if you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat box and we will present it to the speaker himself during the Q&A session. Fourthly, after the Q&A session, please turn on your camera to take a group photo so that you can use it for your report for ELE points. This is only for the UCSI students. And fifth, we will post a feedback form in the chat box after the session. Please remember to fill in for your attendance. Okay, and now before we invite the speaker, I would like to show a short video regarding iMechie itself. So I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to iMechie Nation.
iMechie was established in 1847 by George Stephenson and has some of the world's greatest engineers in its history books. It is one of the fastest growing professional engineering institutions. Headquartered in London, we have operations around the world with members in more than 140 countries. We are involved in a plethora of industries, which includes automotive, rail, aerospace, medical, power, and construction.
The Malaysian branch was incorporated in the year 1997 with the formation of a pro-temp committee with Professor Engineer Dr. Ong Kok Seng as the pro-temp chairman. Applications to the Malaysian Registrar of Society was approved in the year 2000 and the first inaugural meeting was held in January 2001. The branch has efficient business plans and a committee of dedicated volunteers to achieve the mission of the institution through the provision of networking, events, news, links with like-minded organizations, and opportunities for the local engineering community.
Okay, hello. Thank you for watching the brief introduction about iMechie itself. And now let's move on. Let's welcome our speaker for today's session, Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman himself brings a reach of experience working on CAD modeling for the past 3 years. Currently, he's working on completing his master's degree in the field of heat and power engineering. He has been a research associate at Elite Techno Groups since 2020. He has experience in computational fluid dynamics in turbo machinery applications heat transfer applications and CAD softwares such as CATIA, Sirio, and ANSYS. For today's session, Mr. Herman will be discussing about three main parts: introduction to CFD, secondly ANSYS, and third flow simulation for laminar flow. Without a further ado, please welcome Mr. Herman from the Elite Techno Groups. Mr. Herman, you may present your slides and you may carry on. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. First off, tell me, am I audible or not?
Yes, sir. You are, sir.
Great. So it's great having you you to introduce me. And I'm Hemant Fregde. I'm from Elite Techno Groups. But before I start with my session, I just wanted to give a brief about what Elite Techno Groups does. So our company is based on excelling engineers, like skilling engineers, and reducing the gap between the academics and industrial perspective, because a lot of industries nowadays expect different application-based knowledge or practical knowledge from students, and students like academic institutes or major academic institutes that are there out there, there is some lack in delivering that knowledge and in very much confidence. So we try to bridge the gap as much as possible so that we can make freshers industry ready. We can give the necessary skills required by the industry to the students, where through different webinars, workshops, such as today we have arranged this webinar, and discuss exciting topics, new technologies, where you would be able to understand, you'll be able to learn more, you'll be able to explore more during your graduation, during your masters, and you'll be able to become an expert, you'll be able to become proficient in these skills, and you'll be able to better make choices based on different domains and how the industry is moving forward. Like now we have electric vehicles and all. Now it's industry, or now it's a generation of simulations. So it's better to have ideas in simulations. In that regard, I have shared this. I'm presenting these topics that there. So for today's discussion, as he has explained, we are going to study in detail about what CFD is, and a bit of how the commercial tool ANSYS works in CFD. And through that tool itself, we'll be seeing the application of laminar flows. So without further ado, I'll be presenting my screen, and you can let me know if my screen is visible or not.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Carry on.
By the way, I apologize for my webcam because it's not working for me.
Oh,
So,
no issues, sir. No worries. Yeah, your screen is being shared now, sir. You may continue. Thank you, sir.
okay. So I will be starting with today's topic, which is Introduction to CFD. Now, in this brief slide, we will be seeing an overview of what CFD is, what are its advantages, what is the working of CFD, and a step-by-step procedure to do a CFD analysis from a commercial tool perspective, as well as based on application, how it varies, and along with how developing, like how algorithm is developed for this CFD analysis. So without any ado, let's jump in right into this. Okay. So what is CFD? CFD is CFD basically means computational fluid dynamics. It's a branch of fluid mechanics which deals with numerical analysis and data structures to analyze and solve problems involving fluid flows. Now, to understand CFD or computational fluid dynamics in depth, you need to look behind just a little what CFD is based on. So CFD is primarily based on the theory of finite elements. Now, if you look into the finite elements is nothing but it's an analysis process which divides a particular component into different small parts, and these small parts are fundamentally like individually analyzed for different properties, and then that will give you the point values or nodal values of different parameters that are analyzed throughout that model. And when you'd be assembling these equations, you'd be getting the overall solution for your whole problem. So that's just a basic idea of finite element analysis is, and I know this will be very much complicated for you to understand for now, but just bear with me and you'll be able to understand a little bit more as we move ahead with these sessions. So CFD is a branch, essentially is a branch of finite elements along with fluid mechanics. It's a numerical analysis method. Now, basically, there are three different analysis methods. One is experimental analysis, second is numerical analysis, and third is theoretical analysis, or like it's also called as analytical procedure for finding solutions of different problems. Now, in your experimental analysis, what is done? Basically, you have to take a problem, you have to solve like theoretical, you have to make theoretical assumptions, you have to solve for different properties theoretically with a concept, and then you have to create a physical prototype of that particular model. And you have to physically test for different boundary conditions or different conditions of that particular system, and then only you'll be able to get the results from that experimentation, and you'll be able to evaluate or deduce some conclusions or draw some conclusions out of it. So that is about experimental analysis. What is numerical analysis? It's this procedure of solving different numerical equations using numerical methods. Like there are some iterative methods that solve based on initial guesses of some properties, and these equations are solely solved using that, and where partial differential equations are converted to simple linear algebraic form of equations, and those equations are solved by using these numerical iterations to find out the roots of the equation, basically roots of the parameter that you're solving for. And those results will be used as a solution at a particular point in that particular domain. And such solutions, such values for a particular parameter at different points in a whole system will give you a different values for at the particular point, which is an accurate representation, or which is a somewhat approximate representation of the realistic values at that particular point numerically. And it is done with the help of computer codes. It's done with the help of commercial tools like ANSYS, StarCCM, etc., which is fundamentally how a numerical analysis is carried out. Because there is an analytical way to approach numerical analysis, or there are theories based on which numerical analysis or these codes are based. But when you actually dive into doing this analysis, you would see that you would have to manually compute for 1,000, maybe millions of iterations. You would have to compute one single equation million times, and then only you will be able to identify, you will be able to get accurate results or fairly accurate results using these numerical analysis if you go and do it manually. So that's why, to help us with the calculation, to help us with the computation, we have computer cores, and we have with the help of computers, we use numerical analysis to perform CFD. The last part is the theoretical analysis. So theoretical analysis is nothing but based on the assumptions, or based on the equations that are formed by different scientists. Using some assumptions from our own, we modify those equations, we apply some boundary conditions, we apply some constraints to those equations to evaluate for some parameters, to check the different effects of a parameter, and then deduce a result or draw a conclusion out of it. So that's the theoretical analysis. So that's about a brief of what history or what the basis of CFD is and what it's derived from. Now, CFD is a simulation of real fluid systems using modeling, that is mathematical interpretation of physical phenomena, and numerical methods. So as I have mentioned in the numerical analysis, what I have in detail I have mentioned. So to tell you with the help of example, so if I take an example of a fluid moving through a pipe, right? I have to identify which physics it's based on, which physical laws it's based on. Like it has to satisfy the three fundamental laws, that is the momentum equation, the continuity equation, and the energy equation, which essentially are the basis of the physical phenomena. Now, these equations are called as governing equations, and these equations are also called as Navier-Stokes equations, which computational fluid dynamics simulations are based upon. And these equations actually represent, in a way, like how a real fluid system would work. Just with a little bit of modification is required to those equations, and these equations are all partial differential equations. So you have to derive it or reduce it into linear algebraic form of equations, like to be able to feed that data to the computer, so that the computer can understand that in the matrix format. And that matrix format is used as a reference from the software point of view, from the algorithm point of view, to simulate and to solve for the analysis. Now, CFD is made possible due to advancements in computers and their improved computational capability. So due to, because as I have already mentioned, like it takes millions and millions of iterations to solve a single realizable condition to be able to get as much accurate results as possible, to get as much accurate representation of a physical fluid phenomena or a physical system, such as fluid moving through a pipe and how it moves from A point to a B point, and from the start to end, how it behaves throughout that pipe. In a real-time condition, how it would behave, and in a numerical simulation, all that real-time condition behavior should be accurately captured. So in order to capture that, we need to solve these equations millions and millions of times. With the help of computers, with advancements in computers, we would be able to we are able to solve these, and where we have CFD simulations with us. Now let's take a brief look on advantages of CFD. So CFD first has a high fidelity database for diagnosing flow fields. That means due to the decades of research that has been previously done throughout the 30-40 years, we have accumulated so much data and so much research, theoretical, maybe simulation based, maybe based on mathematical models, that there are different models that are categorized or that are generalized for different flow applications. So they can be directly fed into a computer. Using them, we can the solving part becomes easier, and where you can use a direct model to represent a particular physical phenomena or particular physical movement system, and use that as a reference for your solutions. But the only thing will change is your input conditions to that system, where you would get according outputs, and that becomes an easier accessibility for CFD. Next is exploration of flow physics to better understand the behavior of fluids using results. That means using CFD, you can explore different flow physics, from taking as a simple example of fluid is moving over a surface, to as high as Niagara Falls, like the waterfall at Niagara. You can actually simulate that extent of fluid flow, and you can actually predict how the fluid will flow during a certain set of period of time. You can predict the flow of the fluid in that domain, and using CFD. So that is the extent of CFD. So there is numerous possibilities using CFD. Whenever there is flow or a fluid is involved, fluid flow is involved, there is CFD. There has you have an easier accessibility using CFD to better understand the behavior without having to invest a lot. Now, to understand this, let's take an example of fluid or air moving over a car. Like, so if a car is moving on a road at a particular speed, it will feel some drag or some resistance from the air, which is called as drag, right? Which is called as drag as a concept. Now, like imagine if a car manufacturer, if a vehicle manufacturer does not have access to CFD, what he has to do is he has to actually create a prototype. He has to actually experimentally build a prototype, use a wind tunnel, and place the vehicle in the wind tunnel, and then physically run the vehicle in that wind tunnel to actually and put some sensors over the surface of the car or over the surface of the vehicle to analyze manually, like to analyze on a real-time basis what the drag values are, or what the actual values are, and based on that he has to again remodify the design, recreate the prototype that he has built, and then using that again recreated or remodified design, he has to move ahead with this research until he reaches a satisfactory outcome. But with CFD, what you can do is you can just create a model of car using a software, using CAD software. You can import it using a commercial software. You can create this simulation. You can create a wind tunnel in the CFD domain, in the CFD software, and you can actually input conditions for your speed, where you can easily simulate and understand it with less time, with less cost, and with less investment of your own effort, where it will give you approximate results, but that would give you enough results to understand you for your understanding that what the flow physics are and how exactly the fluid is behaving And one more thing, it will give like an approximate solutions of parameters like pressure, velocity, the behavior of like density of if you count compressibility in it, then it will also have that extent. So without having to invest in all of these things, you can just simply sit on a computer and simulate all these results at a transient way, and you'll be able to see the results, and you'll be able to make decisions out of it and create a single prototype out of it at the end of it, and use that single prototype to actually experimentally verify your results with your CFD. So all the redesigning or remodification, that process becomes very small while you're exploring. So that is a huge advantage with CFD. Now, also, you must be wondering that, but there should be a limit to this size of things or the size of a model. I cannot actually conduct a full-scale simulation of a full-scale car through this. So that's not necessary. You can create as large simulation as possible. Just the requirement is your computer system should be strong. Your advanced computer system is there, and you will be able to easily do full-scale simulations like for trains, jets, airplanes, without a prototype, without having to even create a prototype. You can just create your actual model using actual dimensions and use those dimensions to create a model, to simulate it, and to verify the results that are there. Now, the another part with experimental fluid dynamics or experimental analysis, which is also called as EFD, is environmental effects, right? So when you are having to go through the different manufacturing processes that are involved in creating a prototype, in creating a wind tunnel, in simulation, or so there will be lot of challenges while simulating that, right? Apart from this, so we'll be discussing about this point in detail at a later part. For now, let's focus on the environmental effects like storms, weather, behavior patterns of clouds, etc. It also can be predicted basically. So even if you're selecting a component as small a system as you can that you're simulating, basically that like a vehicle car model, as that would be a particular simulation, but the scale of CFD, where you can analyze an entire storm, whether you can predict where the storm will go, whether how the weather will change, how the behavior patterns of clouds is there, how the movements of water or waves in sea. So all of these things you can actually predict. So that actually can be predicted using CFD. Now, coming back to the other point that I was mentioning, that is hazards involving CFD, EFD, right? The experimental fluid dynamics or experimental analysis, where you have to create some simulation models, you have to create some prototypes, you have to actually manually manufacture them. You can avoid all those processes. The major thing hazardous about this is all these manufacturing processes, some kind of pollutions or some kind of adverse effect on the nature, on the environment, right? That can be usually cut down by using experimental, like by using CFD, where you are reducing the process of remodification and redesign, and you are coming to a conclusion throughout to predict the process, to predict the flow behavior, to predict the outcome, and basically you'll be having this as an outcome for you. As a starting point for you to create your actual vehicle or your actual component, and that way majorly like I would say 70% of your hazards would be reduced by using CFD. Now let's come to a complex physics. So like some of the complex physics like movement of stars or planetary boundary layers or stellar revolutions that are there, like in space explorations, or how a planet will move, how Earth will move with respect to Sun in a couple of months, where it will be, at what position it will be. All those things you can actually predict using CFD. You can actually create a small, you can actually create an environment in CFD. You can actually create a domain in CFD which represents those properties. So that is the extent of CFD that it goes. Now let's focus on how does a CFD code works and how a CFD algorithm is formed. The first step is CFD codes are structured around numerical algorithms that can tackle fluid flow problems. So basically, different applications has different equations that are governing those applications. So all of these governing equations are categorized, are generalized, and using them, there are different models are developed mathematically first, and then using computer coding, these mathematical models are converted to computer codes, which actually run at a using iterative methods to solve different fluid flow problems. They only need some input conditions for different parameters that they can use as a first guess, and iteratively they will solve at until they come to a conclusion. Now, the analysis begins with a mathematical model of physical problem. So, as I've told you, like the physical problem, if you take a simple simulation or simple heating of an object, right? Now, heating of an object involves convection heat. Based on the nature of heating, also it will involve convection, conduction. Based on different parameters of heat transfer, it will involve energy transfer. It will involve continuity. It will involve momentum. So all of these parameters will be analyzed. All of these equations will be applied or used to construct a mathematical model of that of the physical problem, which can accurately represent the physical problem. Now, there is one small thing that we cannot actually exactly represent a physical model in the mathematical model, because there are a lot of parameters that varies in a very different way. Like if I talk about pressure, if there are entities that are time dependent, then if there are entities that are compressible, then in that case it becomes very difficult to actually model a physical problem accurately, exactly as it is, using mathematical models. But we can actually model these physical problems to some extent by making some assumptions and creating a actual model for that. Then all of these equations must be satisfied throughout the region when a mathematical model is created for that particular physical problem. Then apart from that, all these fluid properties are to be modeled empirically. So it depends on what fluid you're using, how many properties you're analyzing it for, and what different properties that you want. So based on your requirement, you will be able to apply these properties. A major reason why we go based on requirements and not just create a complete domain or complete model is simply to reduce our computational time. Because if you are adding if you are using a steady state analysis, then in that case you won't be needing the time, the term which is associated with time, right? Because you are doing a steady state analysis, and it doesn't depend on time. So you don't have to use time dependent variables in that analysis, because it is unnecessary wastage of your computational resources, basically. So using this ideology, we use different fluid properties that are to be modeled empirically. Then you have to make simplified assumptions to make the problem more tractable. As I have told you, mathematical model, complete mathematical transformation of a real actual situation is impossible. So you have to make it realizable. You have to make it in a way that it can reach that realizable condition. It can give you approximate results which with a proper accuracy that attempts that. Then you'd be providing appropriate initial and boundary conditions for the problem. Now, initial and boundary conditions are the basis of a problem that defines a problem. And basically you'd be able to constrain a geometry physically. You'd be able to constrain some of the parameters, some of the things that are analyzed. So now if I give you an example, again, the example revisiting, that is the pipe, fluid moving through the pipe. In that case, there can be two different kind of analysis. One is a pipe is moving with a constant temperature. The fluid is moving through the pipe with a constant temperature. In that case, I don't have to monitor the temperature, because I know what my initial condition is. I have assumed that temperature will be constant throughout the system. So that becomes my boundary condition. That becomes my first assumption. So in that case, my energy transfer term would not be calculated. Second thing, based on the speed of the fluid, I would be getting to know regarding what parameters I'm using. Like based on, as you know, based on Reynolds number, The flow is categorized into laminar flow and turbulent flow. Now, if my flow is purely going to be laminar, I would be using laminar flow. So I would be using a laminar model. I would be considering that as my constraint for my simulation. If my flow is going beyond 2000 Reynolds number, then it becomes transitioning, it becomes turbulent, and in that case I need to capture turbulence. In that case I would be using turbulence model. So this is how you can actually set the initial and boundary condition for you before actually jumping into the problem. You have to actually have that understanding, a prime understanding of what constraints you are working with. Then applying and providing these constraints to make the mathematical model solvable. So that is the primary idea of how CFD code works. And in this, after you are providing the initial and boundary conditions, the solver will solve, and it will generate some results for you, and those results will be basis for you to analyze the problem and compare that problem with the theoretical analysis, with theoretical terms where you can learn. Now, let's consider what are the main modules of CFD. So the first is the pre-processing, the second is the solving, and third is the post-processing. Considering all of these processes, the CFD is divided into these three models, and we'll be seeing with respect to a commercial tool how these models are considered, or how we can use this in a commercial tool, because there is a huge difference when you are going for commercial tools and when you are going for developing your own code for a CFD. So those are two different things, and there is a huge gap, because for commercial tools you will have direct features which you can use. You can click on those features and they will be activated. The program will be automatically running in the background, the back end of the system, and that way you'll be having the solution. So in using commercial tools, you only need to understand how the tool works in the back end, how, if I apply a particular model, how it will solve, whether it will be suitable for my model or not. So all of these things you'll be taking care of when you are applying for when you are actually going for commercial tools. If you are going for developing tools, or if you ought to develop your own code for a particular problem that is untractable, that seems untractable, in that case you have to physically develop a mathematical model for that problem theoretically first, then convert it into a numerical model, and convert it into a Jacobian matrix, or convert it into a Gaussian matrix that defines that equation, and that governs actually all the parameters that I've spoken before. And then using those as an input, you'd be creating a flow chart, you'd be creating a code, writing a code based on that, and then running that code for your desired solution. So many of the applications that are there that cannot be tracked by industry, or like the cutting edge technologies that are there. So in that case, there is a need for developing a tool. There is a need for developing code. So that was about that. Now let's jump into the CFD process. So CFD process in respect to commercial tool is covered as, you'd be first making the geometry using CAD software, or you'd be having a ready-made CAD geometry given by an expert, by the engineer or design engineer that is working with it. So generally in industry there are different roles for different people. So in industry, from industry perspective, a design engineer works on a model, and he delivers that model to analysis engineer. Analysis engineer takes the model, he simplifies it according to his needs, according to what physical phenomena he has to operate on. He has to simplify it to repair some of the contents of the model, and then he'd be doing for the meshing and all. So that's the context of things. Now, first, for practice purposes, you'd be making geometry, then you'd be meshing the geometry, then be setting up physics, then you'd be providing solution like model, like in setting up physics, you'd be already applying all the boundary conditions, you'd be setting up the whole case throughout, and then in solution, you'd be running the solution in iteration and calculation by just clicking a calculate button on the commercial tool. And then after the solution is completely done by the computer, you'd be going to the results for post-processing. And in post-processing, there are different tools or different things involved, which we'll be seeing when we are talking in detail about each of these models. So let's see how the segregation is done based on the three main modules, that is pre-processing, solving, and post-processing. So basically, in your pre-processing, your making of geometry or geometry cleanup and preparation and meshing of the geometry is considered, is generally as a part of pre-processing. In solving, your setting of physics and solution part is there, and in post-processing, all of your results that you have calculated, based on that, you'll be creating the data reports, you'll be creating, you'll be deducing some conclusions, you'll be drawing some conclusions out of the analysis, and you'll be coming to a point where you have a particular solution to the particular problem that you are solving. So that covers in post-processing. Now let's discuss in detail. Pre-processing involves two most important aspects. Okay, so in pre-processing, it involves two most important aspects, like geometry repair, or creation, and second is the meshing. So in geometry making, you have to simulate the flow field, we need a negative volume. So what I mean by repair or preparation, or what I mean by the geometry being unusable as it is, as it's provided from the design engineer or design perspective, is because there is some because you have to make it appropriate, you have to make it safety compatible. Basically, you have to make it appropriate for analysis. Let's see how to do it in this geometry making portion. Okay, so any fluid field that you want to simulate, you need a negative volume. So the concept of negative volume is basically in your component, whatever your component that you might have, where you have structural component and you have a vacuum component where through which the fluid, the imaginary fluid or the fluid will flow, right? So if I talk about a pipe, a fluid moving through a pipe, then I would have two components. One is the pipe, actual structural model of the pipe, and through that pipe there is a vacuum through which the fluid will flow, and that vacuum part, or that the fluid component will be called as a negative volume. And for analysis purposes, we do not need, strictly speaking about CFD, we do not require the structural components, we do not require the standard structural components. The reason is because we are only concerned for boundary, we are only concerned with fluid flow analysis, we are only concerned with the fluid field, and to understand that, only we need only the fluid volume, or we need only the analysis volume. We don't need the we don't need actually the structural part. So some analysis where it's where we are analyzing it for fluid and structure interaction, where you actually need both of them to work together, in that case you would need, but otherwise you won't be able to. You would generally need a negative volume. Now there are, based on this negative volume, also there are two types of fluid flow. The two types of simulations can be set up during the geometry making itself. Now, first is an external flow simulation, and second is an internal flow simulation. Now, for external flow simulation, you would have to create a box, like you're saying, above this particular ship. So if I take about this ship analysis, what I have to do is, when the ship is moving over the waters, I need to understand how much resistance it feels when it's moving at a certain speed through the waters or through the domain. So so basically, the surface part, the bottom surface part, is what I'm assuming it to be, is not in actually contact with the water, but it's actually in contact with air. So I'm considering air as a fluid for my simulation, and I have constructed this domain to simulate this flow, where at this particular point will be my inlet, at this particular point it will be my outlet. My air will flow from this point, it will go out, and this basic consideration would be made while creating a domain and while making it visible, right? So this is done for external flows. Now, what is done for internal flows? So if you are seeing this application for turbocharger, you'll be able to see this that the fluid is moving inside a component, right? And there is also another component that is rotating. There is a rotating part of a component that is mentioned over here. Now, in that case, whatever the vacuum that you are seeing in this, apart from this apart from this component, that is your negative volume. Basically, that is your fluid volume, which you are going to analyze for, and which you need to extract while you're preparing for your simulation. Because essentially you'd be mentioning like there are different factors that are associated with this when you are setting up this flow, when you are setting up this fluid. You'd be you'd consider a few parameters like the structural wall of this component, inside component. Only a thin surface of the structural component is considered uh, for the analysis, and not the whole part. So that it's a surface which represents that particular component, but and inside of the component is also not considered throughout the simulation, so it won't be affecting our simulation part. So while you are dealing with fluid, you'd be only dealing with fluids. And this terms, the geometry making is done in this terms. You'd be creating the geometry. So basically, all these concepts you'll be understanding much more clearly when we are going for our GUI session, and when we are going in depth about our fluid session, our tomorrow's session for cooling fan study. Now, let's come to generating a mesh. A mesh is basically once the negative geometry, once the model is provided to the software, it is meshed through various processes, and it's kind of dividing it's kind of dividing different modules in it's kind of dividing a particular model into different parts, and those parts are used to analyze a process, right? So the part of making these small elements, the part of making a particular whole model into small elements, is what called as mesh. When mesh, the only idea here when you are generating a mesh is while you are generating the mesh, you'd be focusing on the controlling part of the mesh, where you'd be focusing on the important region where you'd be having a denser mesh, and you'd be having different components that are that makes you interested, that are your regions of interest basically in throughout the model. Even if you create a whole domain, you would have regions where your focus will be there, where you are focused completely, and you'd be like densing, you'll be creating these small elements in more frequency at that particular point, rather than focusing at the other parts of the model. So to show you, or to clarify this point in detail, you'll be seeing this is my 2D geometry of a car model. So this is a surface where I have drawn this vacuum space for a car. So this reason is because I'm flowing it for external flow, and the solid part that you're seeing over here is representing my fluid domain, where the fluid flow will be, so my fluid flow will be coming in this direction and will be going in this direction. So accordingly, I have created the geometry, and I want to mesh it now. So basically, this surface, I will be creating small elements like this, as you are seeing, and at each of these element, CFD uses, by the way, CFD uses finite volume method, which treats these cells as volumes. For 2D, it treats it as a rectangle, but for 3D, it treats it as a cubical volume, and that it will have a center point at center, like let's consider this point. At center, it will have a node point at which it will be computing all the properties related to this particular section or this particular element. And this particular node will represent all the properties of fluid that is moving through this domain at that particular point for this small element. Same thing will go for this element. Same thing will go for this element. And using the reference of previous element as a first guess, for the next element, your solution will be calculated. And this is how mesh is translated to, is used to solve like this is how discretization or small elements are used to solve the solution. This is why we do these different segregations, and this is why we use this as a part. But there is one more thing. Now, when you are focused, when you are doing this flow simulation over a car, the region of interest will be limited most probably to this. But the reason why we are creating a huge domain is because we want it as realistic as possible. When you are seeing a car, a vehicle moving on a road, there are a lot of parameters that are affecting. So you have to actually understand the translation, how the translation will go, because if you limit your domain to this particular part up to this point, then in that case all your bottom parameters will also get affected. And that's how because this is an iterative solving method that it uses mathematical iteration to solve for these different physics. It actually it actually has to be a larger domain in order to accurately capture these fluid flows. So when you are considering mesh, you have to be accurate, and you have to be also you have to be uh, efficient with your resources, efficient with your computational resources, basically. So due to that sole reason, as you can see here, there are smaller elements that are mentioned in this region as compared to this region, because when you are dealing with flow simulation, the major things that you are going to deal with is drag generated by the vehicle, and the flow separation that is going to occur at this particular point, towards the end of your vehicle. So these are the two major points that you are going to analyze it for. And due to that focus of my analysis, due to those points are being focus of my analysis, I give less credit, or I give less importance to the region that is well above this fluid domain, which is actually balanced and where I don't have any interest basically to see. So that's how I generate my mesh, and that's how I densify my mesh to accurately balance between computation time or computational resources, and along with to achieve accuracy. So this, by the way, depends on different analysis, like different analysis, different applications, and what are the outcomes are to be expected from an analysis. Based on that, the meshing strategy would be considered. Now let's come for the solving part. So solving part consists of setting up physics and solution calculation. So in setting up physics, you would have to apply boundary conditions to the meshed models. So whatever meshing that you have done whatever meshing that you have seen in the previous case, to that meshing you would actually apply the physical constraints here, like the solution equations for continuity, momentum, the solution equations for turbulence if there is to be modeled for turbulence, and along with the boundary values, like what is the inlet velocity, what is the velocity of the wind that is blowing over the car. So something in regards to that we have to apply. Now, apart from this, you'd have to select these appropriate values for boundary conditions that actually mimic the real life condition, such as if it's an internal flow or if it's an external flow. Based on the application, you have to apply these boundary conditions. Also, you can add conditions like if the flow is to be turbulent or you need to have gravity involved, your flow is governed by gravity, then in that case also you have to like add these properties or consider these properties while solving. Then some extra inputs might be needed to express the situation, such as you have to when you are calculating for drag, you have to monitor the drag, or if you want to generate a specific level of drag through a simulation, that is the whole simulation can be simulated in such a way that you can define a property which governs the overall simulation outcome. So basically, if you are set on achieving a particular value for a particular component, then you can actually set it, and based on that, the solution will be running iteratively, and it will be solving for that value. But in that case, it may take you months, weeks, even years, because as I said, it is an approximate situation, and all of the numerical simulations will give you an approximate result. But to obtain exact solution, it's really impossible, considering all these parameters and considering the limitations that we have with our physics. Then you'd be also applying materials to the domain. You'd be setting the type of analysis. You'd be defining the symmetry. So the case with symmetry is considering when you are operating a simulation system, basically, that has a symmetric view. So if I divide my flow domain into two halves, like symmetric to an axis, in that case, if the upper half or the right half is sufficient for me to represent the flow simulation, and that can be translated to my other half, then I can use the symmetric condition to simulate for the first half of the simulation only. That would reduce my computation time by half, because essentially I'm solving for half of the model, and then using that half as a basis of my simulation or basis of my results, I can actually ask the computer or software to replicate whatever results that you have gotten at the or towards the left side or towards the top side, to right side or to the bottom side respectively, based on the symmetrical condition that I have defined. So these are different kind of things that are there in CFD. These are more of an advanced kind of things. So for now, just don't be going into too much depth in those, because first just grasp these concepts, slowly learn about how a pre-processing is done, what meshing is, then get to know how a small simulation, a simple simulation is done, and then eventually you'll be building up for heavier simulations for your for different projects and all. Now, solution calculation part. Here, all the selection of governing equations is done, and then they are applied to a mathematical model. Then the convergence criteria is set up in this step. The convergence criteria basically means that you are setting up an accuracy criteria, which if that particular accuracy is achieved, then your iteration will stop, because essentially I've told you that there are millions of simulations or millions of iterations that are done. So what governs it, like when it will stop, whether it will be in such a case that the CFD, if I run a CFD simulation and if I'm unable to stop it. So in order to avoid that, in order to avoid those kind of scenarios, there is a convergence criteria, which if it's achieved, then that based on the convergence criteria, basically you are defining your accuracy. Convergence criteria is defined by two parameters. The first parameter is the solution that you get using two successive iterations. So if I'm solving for a particular property, let's say pressure, I get for the first iteration, I get the pressure value as 10 pascals, assuming you guys are familiar with SI units, or we can consider it as bar also. So if you consider the initial calculation of pressure for the first iteration as 10 pascals, and for the next immediate successive iteration, it has a solution. It gives me a solution of 9.80 pascals or something. And similarly, it goes on reducing at a particular point where the difference is very minimal between two successive iterations. The difference is very minimal, and it is in the limits of what I have set up, what convergence criteria I have set up. So I basically, if I have to set up convergence criteria, I would set it up using a mathematical value of, using a decimal value of 0.001, and then if the difference between these two successive values is less or is equivalent to 0.001, then my actual accuracy is achieved, and at that point my solution will stop and it will give me precise results that I wanted. In case, like most of the cases, like most of the mistakes are generally made during the setting up the physics and all. So considering all those things, you might get some. So whatever you would be analyzing it for, you'd be getting some kind of solution. So you have to be very careful when you analyze the solution, whether the solution is in line, whether the behavior is in line with the theoretical properties or not. Theoretical behavior or not, whatever there is whatever there is documented in your books, if it's according to that or not. So you have to actually verify that from a general conceptual point of view. Like if I say, if I'm operating a pump, a centrifugal pump, then I know for a fact that my outlet pressure should rise at a particular RPM if I'm rotating my impeller at a particular, if I'm rotating at my impeller at a particular RPM, then I bound to have a higher pressure at my outlet, which develops a pressure head, which is the baseline of operation of pump. And when you're observing on your CFD, on your simulation tool, if your inlet pressure is greater than outlet pressure, then essentially your simulation is wrong. So all of these things are considered, all of these things are what we can say analyzed using convergence criteria, and you have to keep these things in mind while you're doing analysis. So what governs the flow, what exact physical thing that I wanted, whether it is represented or not, all of these things. Then this actually can be given by tolerable difference between two successive iterations, as I told you. This criterion are to be given for each and every equation that is applied to a mathematical model, by the way. So governing equations, why there are plural, why there are multiple equations applied, because you have to because to represent a real situation, it has multiple factors affecting that situation. Based on those factors, these equations are developed. All of those equations are separate from one another, have a purpose, and have a solution to perform. Like continuity equation governs the mass flow throughout the system, whether it's completely balanced or not. It governs that. If it's not, then your solution will be wrong. Momentum equation governs the space, what momentum is transferred throughout at the start of the your simulation, at the end of the simulation, whether it's completely transferred or not. It's properly governed by momentum equation. So all of these equations play a part, and each of these equations should have a limit, or should have a convergence criteria setup, which is enough for us to understand that my particular solution is accurate. Then you'd be setting up maximum number of iterations. So this is also another limiter that you're going to add for avoiding infinite number of iterations that are going to be there in a CFD solution. So when you're trying to apply maximum number of iterations, like if I want to calculate for 100 iterations, my simulation will solve it for 100 iterations, and it will solve the small tiny element that we have seen in this. It's just okay. So here it will solve this small tiny element for 100 iterations until it gets the proper value. So based on the first initial guess, it will start, and it will then solve for based on the number of iterations along with the step size that you're going to do. So I'll be coming back in detail about that when we are seeing in the Fluent GUI. But for your reference, just imagine this: 100 iterations for this element, 100 for this, and if there are 100 100K or 100,000 elements, then 100,000 elements multiplied by 100 iterations. And that many amount of iterations the solution is going to solve when I set it up for 100 iterations. And if I add the step size, if I add the control over the step size, then in that case it will again multiply it with again it will multiplied by the step size, and again the solution iteration number will increase and skyrocket. So this is why I was mentioning that whenever you are solving, it will be millions and millions of iterations for actual real problems, so to get accurate solutions. And it will also take you it can also take you months or maybe years to get a proper solution out of it. Now that was about the solving part of it, how the processor works. Now let's consider the post-processing part. Now in post-processing part, there is a very cool phenomena. There is a very cool phenomena in CFD, and also CFD is called as colorful fluid dynamics because of this single phenomena, that all these commercial tools or all these post-processing tools that are there, they come with the inbuilt graphic. So they actually they have a color coding of their own that represents this behavior of the properties, which you can actually visualize. and you can actually run animations. You can view of how a particular particle is moving from A point to B point through that simulation that I have set up. How, if you are doing a transient simulation, how a particular part, how a particular, if I'm talking about pump and impeller rotation, then how the rotation is captured, is how the impeller is moving according to that movement of the impeller, how my pressure, velocity, and all those flows are changing throughout the domain. I can actually visualize it. So it's really the best part about CFD is you can actually see from your perspective how my parameters are varying, whether they are accurate or not, and that gives you a sense of satisfaction, and that gives you a sense of achievement where you can apply, where you have something, you have applied something and you got a useful result out of it. There are other parameters also when you are actually going for the post processing of things. It usually done using contours and streamline flow paths. So contours and streamlines we'll be seeing or we'll be viewing when you are going for the graphical parts in our GUI. But for now, just take it as a reference, where it will only show you the color coding. It will only show you if this particular region is red, that means it's high in concentration for that particular property. That means the value of the particular property is high in that region. If it's in blue, the particular property is in lower values in that particular region. So that is viewed by the contours and streamlines and graphical part. But what about actual results? So there are actually different function calculators based on what results you have gotten for pressure, velocity. You can actually use these function calculators to calculate at a particular instance, at a particular point, what pressure is acting at that particular point. If it's a transient simulation, then you can actually include time in that, and at a particular time, at a particular space, at a particular point, what value of that particular parameter is, you can actually see, you can actually calculate. And based on this data, you will have a huge amount of data that will be post processed. That can be done using Excel. That can be imported to the Excel for numerical calculation and numerical post processing, creating graphs, generating simulation graphs, and understanding the performance parameters are in limit or within the limits or not. So all of that is an extension of post processing. But primarily, your post processing is focused on if your analysis is accurate or not. So let's see this particular problem that I was explaining throughout this our journey for pre-processing, solving, post-processing. So to tell you what is the outcome of this result is basically, as you can see, these are the contour lines for velocities. As it's shown over here, I'm not sure whether you are able to see this, but its unit is meter per second. So this particular contour is whole showing velocity, and the blue part, it means that it has very minimal velocity, close to zero, made zero at a particular point. And as it goes on increasing, the color coding or color scheme will change according to this rainbow coloring system. So this is how I generally, this is how the simulation is done. And as I told you, to consider the flow separation phenomena, like if the flow separation is occurring or not, if the vortex or eddies are forming or not, at the end of the simulation, you'll be able to see at the end of this car model, instead of the airflow moving from left to right, like in this direction, it is circulating. So it will have a circulation flow. It will have huge impact in vehicle efficiency, how it's moving, at what speed it's moving. So in order to minimize this region, in order to minimize this vortex formulation, you have to modify the design, the back-end design of the car to reduce the eddies formation. This is how you can actually, so based on this analysis, you can revisit your geometry, make the necessary changes, apply all the constraints again, and view the basic difference from your first analysis and your modified analysis to check whether my eddies are controlled or not, whether my simulation requirement is done or not. So that is the extent of like simulation of car, and that is just one scenario I'm explaining. But there are different scenarios, different factors that are affecting. Based on analysis, based on requirement, it changes. So all in all, in concluding for this presentation, what we had seen is, we had seen what is CFD, we had seen what are the advantages of CFD, what is the working of CFD and step-by-step procedure to do or perform a CFD analysis. Now we'll be moving on to our ANSYS Fluent GUI. So I have a video for you. For ease of accessibility, I have used this video for you to better explain the step-by-step flow of how the ANSYS Fluent GUI works. Now, to consider the ANSYS Workbench, ANSYS Fluent GUI, you would have to consider the first consider the ANSYS Mechanical GUI. So using this video, I'll just brush up the ANSYS Mechanical, and then I'll move on to the using the small part of this video. I'll be mentioning what is the workbench and how it looks, and then I will be moving on to the second video where you'll be seeing in detail how the Fluent working is done, how the ANSYS Fluent works basically. So this is the primary ANSYS GUI, or when you open your ANSYS Workbench, you would see these are the main modules. These are the in these four modules, or in these four sections, your ANSYS Workbench is divided. The first is toolbox. The second is project schematic. The third is, I'm not sure. Yeah, third is messages, and fourth is the properties of project schematic. The thing was, I was not sure that you would be seeing the messages box, but still. So I'll tell you one by one what is the significance of each of these components are of this workbench, and we'll see a little bit detail in what is the most important, what are the few points that are important in the workbench when you are going for an analysis. So primarily, your toolbox, you'll have all the necessary systems. It has analysis system, component systems, other external systems, custom systems, and design by explanation. All of those different systems based on different analysis types and different requirements. These systems are designed by ANSYS. So using these different systems, you would be analyzing different types of analysis. It's not just limited to CFD. It's also having fluid structure interaction simulations. It also has the FES simulations, or static structural simulations. So all of these are usually combined to form the analysis systems. And project schematic, all of the data that you are going to have will be operated on, and it will give you a roadmap basically to show all of your systems and how they are interconnected with each other, which system represents what analysis, if there are multiple analysis, if they are interconnected analysis, and you'll be able to view in this project schematic. In your properties of project schematic, all of the properties that are associated with the project schematic is attached basically, like solution processes, or what are the different solutions that are going to be conducted through your project schematic are all represented, or properties of that solutions will be shortly in a brief represented in your project schematic. One more added advantage for advanced users of CFD, generally they prefer using project properties of project schematic to make changes to their solution processes, to make changes to their solution conditions, in order to avoid the hassle for going through all the analysis steps and all of those things. But for your practice, you have to go through the overall system analysis practice before moving on to the advanced processes. And lastly, coming to the messages box, it has a brief understanding. It has a brief of what operations you are doing, and it will show you the recurring warnings or errors that you are doing, which you can actually check or cross-reference where you actually went wrong, in what software, in what tool you actually went wrong, what was your error, and it will also show you some of the recommendations that you can follow up to make changes throughout your project, and like correct the error that you are having. So that is a brief about these ANSYS Mechanical. Now let's see our Fluent GUI. Now in this GUI, simultaneously I will be explaining how physical phenomena for laminar flow and how the flow simulation for laminar flow is conducted, and based on that we'll be saying. Okay. So overall, you'll be seeing all of each of these modules are covered through the simulation or through this tour, where you'll be getting a general idea of how the UI looks. You'll be getting a general idea of what geometry, mesh, solution setup, the setup conditions, solution, and results mean. Now, as I told you, in the different analysis systems, you will see at the right hand of the screen, there are different components that are mentioned, like fluid flow, blow molding, fluid flow extrusion, fluid flow CFX, fluid flow fluent. Depending upon the type of and the nature of your analysis, these applications, and ANSYS has this feature where it has divided its coding based on application. It has used these commercial algorithms for different applications. So Fluent usually deals with fluid flows that are simpler, that are having simpler physics, not more complex geometries are there. So you can simulate with that. And more prominently, it deals with some of the parts that are stationary. Like most probably, it deals with stationary parts. But if you have your moving parts that are not that much complex, then in that case you can use Fluent for analysis. Otherwise, you can use CFX. CFX is a great tool for turbomachinery applications, or using the applications for where it involves fluid also and movement of different parts due to that movement of fluid. So using that, you have to CFX is a little bit easier for handling moving part simulations. But Fluent also you can do to some degree, to some extent, but it has its limitations. And it will be much easier to do in CFX than Fluent. But Fluent is the baseline where you should start for your simulation. To understand all the essence of what analysis is. It's the best component to start with. Now to drag a component, now to actually use a component, you have to select left click and drag it. In this format, you'd see a red box that shows create a standalone system. And once you drop it in that drop box, your system is called in this project schematic. That means the data for the system for the fluid flow fluent is the default data is prepared at this particular point, and you are trying to do the fluid flow simulation using Fluent is established. Then you can all rename your analysis over here, and there are different cells like geometry, mesh, setup, solution, and results. So using each and every single cell, you would be defining. So each cell represents a tool. Each cell represents its own software. So for geometry, there are two different softwares. Like one is SpaceClaim, second is Design Modeler. For meshing, it's a Fluent meshing software. Setup, solution, and results, it has a unified software which operates on Fluent. So basically, setup, solution, and results is also called as a Fluent software or Fluent in your component system. So this is your analysis systems, and these from dragging your analysis system, all of this interlinked cell are dragged. So basically, your geometry is linked to mesh, your mesh is linked to setup, your setup is linked to solution, and your solution is linked to results. So whatever changes that you are going to make in the geometry, all of the primary changes will be provided, or all the primary data will be directly linked to mesh through this analysis system. Then you have component systems. So you can also drag these geometry cell as a standalone, as a separate tool in project schematic. Same goes for mesh, same goes for setup, same goes for results, because setup and solution, it goes hand in hand, and it has its own combination of tool. So this is how you can actually do for and these standalone systems for your geometry cell, for a mesh, are called as component systems, are called as components of your analysis system. So if you are dragging it from your component systems, as you are seeing at the left bottom corner of the screen, component system is mentioned, and that you'll be able to see different components. Now let's move on to the geometry preparation. So here we are seeing a fluid flow simulation through a pipe. So for that, it's a simple simulation. So I'm creating a pipe geometry. Now always remember, when you are trying to open this software, as it's heavy and as it has system limitations for you, it will take some time to load up the software. So primarily we'll see for the space claim, it's as easier for operations, but there is also a design modeler thing you'll be able to see. Now in this video, you'll be seeing that your space claim is open. Okay, so as this is the space claim GUI, where at the left you would see structure. It documents all the data. It shows you what components you are editing, what solids and what are its names and all, and what are the properties of these components, what are the properties of the solids, design wise speaking. And also one property is also added, like material wise, you can also add material, you can also add phase at this stage itself, but it's advised to not add it because it creates because there is certain process that is to be followed during meshing, during setup, in order for you to actually analyze it. So that will eventually give you error. So it's better to have it unchanged, because in your general process, in what I'm going to show you, it will be default, it will be automatically covered, it will be automatically considered. Now when you're seeing this schematic here, it will have your coordinate system representing, and at this bottom over here you will be seeing that the coordinate system is mentioned in this manner for XYZ coordinates. And using some of these different features, you'll be able to easily move around, you'll be able to operate on these things. The first thing you'll be focusing on is the Orient tab. So in Orient tab, let me just forward it a bit. Yeah. So before we move on to the Orient tab, I'll just show you I'll just tell you about the importance of the structure tab. So in here, you can actually see you can actually create different components, and to separate one model from the other, one solid from the other, as a different component, as a standalone component, and you can edit that component in that particular standalone component. This method is done specifically when you are having multiple parts to be operated with alongside with each other, and there are more than one parts. So that's why we do this component system. So when you click on when you right click on this design, you'll be seeing that your component will be basically activated. So when you right click on design, you'd see new component. When you click on new component, a component below that design is created, and it's now highlighted. As you can see, it's bold. So the bold means the component that is in bold, that means that it's activated component. That means you are operating in that particular component. And also you can create multiple components, and this way you'd be able to create the structure tree. So when you when you are editing a particular component, make sure that that particular component is active, because when it's active, it will only make changes according to that component and not with respect to what you are having on your screen. So make sure the component that is highlighted over here is active on your screen, that is actually showing on your screen, for which you are applying the changes to. Then there is this Orient tab, there is Sketch tab, there is Mode tab. So primarily using this Mode tab, you will be able to change your mode from Sketch mode to 3D graphic mode. From Sketch, so you have to switch at the start itself from Sketch mode to 3D graphic mode to be able to select a plane on which you are going to construct your geometry, you are going to edit your geometry. So based on the selection of when you click on your plane, left click on your plane and click on plan view, which is mentioned at the top over here, you would be able to change the view with respect to that particular plane for your editing purpose. So first we are creating a sketch, then we are going to create a solid model out of it. Its fundamental concept is similar to other CAD modeling softwares you might have familiarity with, such as CATIA or Creo SolidWorks. The primary function of each of these components is similar, just that the names might be different. Now, when you are clicking on this icon over here, which shows an isometric cube view, so it's to get out of the plan view, it's to get out of the front view or the view sketching mode, sketching view from your not mode, from view, sketching view to isometric view, and then you can change your mode from this Mode tab. there are three modes. The first is sketch mode, second is a section mode, it's called section mode, and third is your 3D mode. So section mode will basically allows you to create sections at a particular plane that shows how your geometry is edited at a particular from inside. So when you are seeing the application from tomorrow, you'll be able to explore. So I'll be exploring more about these sections and showing you in detail about that. Now, when we are going to the plan view, as stated before, you would be using sketch geometries. You'll be creating the sketch. So it's simple as clicking a pre-designed shape. As you are creating a pipe, you'll be click on the circle, left click on circle, click anywhere on the point, preferably the center of the origin, and just drag your mouse anywhere. And due to the snap to grid and snap to angle, these 2 points at the left of your structures tab, you'd see that both of these types are active. You would be able to drag it. You would be able to move your cursor with these references of points. So basically, this grid is created with 1 mm apart distance, and that will give you an idea for your dimensions, and it will be easier for you to display adjust dimensions. One more thing, apart from other other tools, Specialm has an easier accessibility where while you're actually drawing while you're dragging your mouse, you can actually edit the dimension right here itself. So whatever dimension that you want to put, you can just put it as 30 mm or something, or then you can click enter, and this particular circle will be transformed into 30 mm diameter, as this phi symbol represents diameter. So based on this, you can create the circle. Now, once the circle is created, you'll be again going to switching back to the mode, because we are only creating a pipe, and we only need this surface to be extruded into a pipe to create a model, right? I'm creating a solid model, but I'll show you. I will give you the significance of why I'm creating this. Okay, so to create the solid model from this, you'd have to select the. Okay, but before moving on to the structural part, before moving on to the extrude part, just consider this part where we can actually move around sketch, zoom around sketch, and spin the sketch. So using zoom, you can zoom in and zoom out, as you have just seen. Using pan, you can move the particular body in a specific view, and using spin, you can actually rotate the body in 3-dimensional coordinate system, as this this system is a 3-dimensional system. Now here I have if I just go back just a little, I would be then moving on to the next part where I would need to extrude. So there is a pull option which allows you to extrude the surface. So literal translation is used here while naming the option, that is pull. So if I select the surface and if I pull it in either of the direction, it will be the solid of that particular solid from the surface will be generated, and it will be created as it will be creating an extrude basically. So in this manner, and also same thing as we have seen in the sketch, you'd be also seeing the dimension part where you can actually edit the dimension. Let me just back it up a little bit. Yes, so here, you'd see that you can actually edit your dimension while dragging your mouse itself. So you can actually give the dimension for your extrude here itself. Similarly, when this is the general body that I have created, this is my pipe which I'm going to use. Now, you must be wondering that I'm just giving dimension for 40 mm for that particular thing, and I'll be adjusting this geometry now. Let me just fast forward. Yeah. So this was now, as you can see at the left structure, you'd see below design there is a solid created, which is represented by this. Also, you can create your solids in this design itself, or you can create a new component and create activate that component and create whatever changes that you are going to make, or create a model in that component. Now, I have created this simple pipe. This represents my negative volume of pipe. This actually represents my fluid part that is going to move, that is going to be there throughout the system, through the pipe. So there are primarily two approaches for your analysis that were mentioned. I actually didn't go in quite depth into those approaches. One is called as Eulerian approach, and second is a Lagrangian approach. You can also explore by yourself what those are. So using those approaches, the primary understanding of CFD is being made that we'll be using an approach to analyze through the volume of the fluid rather than analyzing a singular particle or singular fluid particle through the domain. So when I'm considering this pipe, I actually have disregarded my pipe geometry. I've only considered the inner volume of the fluid. So this is called as negative volume. This is what I'm going to need for my simulation. The primary reason is because I only want what my how my fluid is moving throughout the simulation, and I can actually use this round surface that is there as a wall for the pipe. And in ANSYS, in any kind of software, simulation software, you would use the wall condition to represent a wall, and it will represent the boundary for that fluid. It will represent the boundary of the actual pipe, actual solid, what we can say, metal pipe. It will represent it. It's an imaginary thing, but it represents that. And that's how it's coded in the software, in the algorithm. That's how it's represented. So for now, just consider this as a primary thing, that whatever this wall of the pipe is from the cylinder will be the wall of my pipe, and it will be acting as a boundary of my pipe. Now similarly, the front face will be acting as my inlet, and the back face will be acting as my outlet, where from this front face my fluid will flow, and from the back face my fluid will get out of the system. So this is one of the applications of internal flows. The application that we have seen on the presentation was for external flows. So internal flows are pretty much like easier for us to start with CFD with simulations, because it will give you a clear understanding, and it has less complicated parameters involved, considering compressibility. So it's considering the incompressibility of the fluids. So generally you have to start with incompressible and simpler simulations, then go on ahead with the advanced simulations to or incorporate with. Now let's move on. Now my geometry is complete, so I'll be just closing this domain, and I will be going back to my workbench. So yeah. So now, as you can see here, my geometry is complete. So it shows me a green tick. Other domains, it shows for meshing, it shows the refresh button, and for setup, solution, and result, it shows question mark. The reason is showing refresh button for mesh, because geometry is linked to mesh. When your geometry is complete, when you are using an analysis system, all of these components are interlinked to each other, and all of them are dependent of the previous one. So due to that, it's asking me to refresh your mesh, to work your mesh, so that I can move forward with the setup. So that's what this refresh symbol here means. Now for meshing, similar thing, I would be just either I will be double clicking the mesh, or I'll be right clicking and click on edit to move into this mesh domain, or mesh GUI. So this is the mesh GUI. Now in here also, similar on the similar lines itself, every single tool is preferred, where the top part represents all the different features, the left part represents the outline or the tree, which you have to take it as a reference. And there is a third component, which will be this big component, which is shown in the blue, which is a graphical component, which shows what changes you are making graphically. Now we are waiting for the geometry to be attached to this mesh. So as I told you, when the geometry being the geometry attached to the mesh in the ANSYS workbench, it was not completely attached. It's just linked. That means the input data, when you're actually opening the mesh, then only the software will try to process the input data to avoid the computational resources wastage, and that's how it will generate the mesh. Now, when in mesh, when your geometry is appeared or attached, it will show your geometry over here directly, and at this outline tree you would see your model, geometry, coordinate system, and mesh. So all of these properties are defined, are default defined, are actually imported from the SpaceClaim software in regards to what the geometry is created in, to take the reference point of the origin of that world, of that simulation interface, and using that similar reference, it has imported over here. Now in mesh, basically we are going to just divide this domain into small elements by creating the mesh domain. Now when I click on mesh, when I click on mesh, I would see these different options like insert, update, generate mesh. So from my primary analysis, any kind of analysis it will be, you would go for single term analysis, where you just create simply generate mesh without changing any kind of parameters to see how coarse or how many parameters, how many mesh elements are generated, and what is the result, how much accurate result you are getting from that generated mesh. That will act as your reference point where you can judge your mesh to improve your accuracy, where you can modify your mesh taking that as a baseline and improving on it, reducing the number of element size, basically because when you reduce the number of you reduce the size of the element and increase the number of elements, then in that case you are solving for more number of elements, right? You are solving for more elements. So essentially your accuracy will increase, because due to the smaller segregation of elements, whatever the parameters, whatever the properties that are going to be simulated through those parameters, or to that smaller element, infinitesimally small element, it will capture the more the accuracy it will be for capturing your fundamental simulations. So while meshing, your first reference point would be to just click on generate mesh and see what the mesh is generated. Here, when you see at the left bottom corner, details of mesh will be displayed, where you'll be seeing display, defaults, sizing, quality. So all of these are different parameters with which you can change your mesh. You can change your mesh size, you can change your element size, you can even check the quality of your mesh, which is another concept in itself in computational fluid dynamics, which gives you an idea and basic understanding of if your mesh is going in the right direction, if your settings that you are applied are going in the right direction. That will give you somewhat idea of accuracy also. But that will come with the experience, when you are more prone to doing different simulations. When you have done like 10-15 simulations, then only you will be having that basic understanding of how to adjust the mesh, how these different parameters, small parameters, affect the accuracy. For now, just focus on the generate mesh part. So yeah, when you click on generate mesh, it will take some time and it will be generating the mesh. Also, it will highlight in green the part that is going through the meshing domain. And if there are multiple components, then it will first mesh by surface, then mesh by edges, vertices, then it will mesh by surfaces, it will mesh by volume. So there are different meshing strategies that are applied. For direct generating mesh, software take it as program controlled mesh and default settings to generate this mesh. But there are actually manual controls which are given in here, mesh and in mesh control also, where you can actually change, you can actually add mesh, and in mesh edit you can use this option to advancedly edit meshes. Now, as you can see here, my domain is divided into small elements. So actually I can check this below. If I scroll this details of mesh scroll bar down, you will see that there are statistics. There is a statistics option in which it will show me the statistics of my number of elements, mesh count. Basically, it will give me a number of elements that are generated through this mesh. I can also, there is one more important thing in details of meshing sizing. As you can see, the size function is curvature, the relevant center is coarse. That means this is a very coarse mesh. And for explaining purpose, I'm just keeping it as coarse. But for actual analysis, you would have to change these parameters to find whether to keep it the default minimum face size, default maximum face size, or change it to according to your dimensions. Like, so this is where your understanding of dimensions is also important for generating the mesh, because if your model is of 1000 mm, let's see, and if you give it 1 mm as smallest face size, then the smallest element that is being generated, or that is minimum requirement for element generation, is 1 mm. Maximum requirement would be based on the software, or if you define it as 1 mm, then it would be restricting your maximum and minimum requirement for 1 mm. In that case, you would have 1 mm small elements throughout your domain, and for your 1000 mm size of your component, it will be innumerous, like incredible amount of elements for you to compute from. And due to these computations, you would be requiring a lot of computational resource, basically. So that is there. So but we are analyzing for laminar flow, so this much coarse gradient is fine. Now let's move on to one of the important thing. So my mesh is generated. Now I have to give name selections. The primary idea behind giving name selections is to define a boundary, to give a name to a boundary. So if this particular face that is highlighted in green right now is my inlet, then I have to give it as a name selection as inlet here itself in meshing domain itself, because it helps us identifying in the setup during the setup that this particular face is an inlet, this particular face is an outlet, because as it's a simple geometry, it will be easier to identify. But when the information translates to setup, it's better to have the information on our terms, like what face is defining which which boundary condition, and then based on that you would be able to translate it better. So here there is an option called create name selection. Yeah. So as you can see on the screen, it's highlighted create name selection. Using that option, you'd be able to see this window will pop up, and you'd be naming that part or that surface as inlet. One more important thing, when you are trying to name it, at the top corner you'd be seeing that there are different options. So this where my arrow is highlighting currently, it is representing vertices. So if this point is on, if this particular feature is on, my cursor will only select points or vertices through this domain. Then second option is edge. It will only, if this option is on, then it will only select edges. As you can see, this surface option is on, it's pressed, it is only selecting faces. So that is also an important part. So you have to first click on faces, and then you have to go ahead with the create name selection to create the name selection. And also you have to name the selection appropriately, because some of these inputs like inlet, outlet, some of these words like inlet, outlet, wall, so these are default and these are already preloaded in the ANSYS Fluent. So ANSYS Fluent understands this. So if you give inlet, outlet, so it will appropriately apply limiters to these surfaces that are default limiters in order for your simulation to go smoothly, and due to that it will help in your simulation, will end up in lesser amount of errors when you are applying. So make sure that you are applying it in, you are giving it in small cases, all small cases or lower cases, and you are applying it as this. You are mentioning the name in lower cases, and it should be inlet, outlet, wall based on that. So once I have done this, I would be going ahead with the second part. So for the second part, I would be rotating. So yes, again, there is these similar terms that are there, which is revolve, pan, and zoom in, zoom out. So these are options. Their looks are different, but their prime objective is same. So if you had worked with some CAD softwares or any kind of a simulation software, then you must have the understanding of how these operations work. So all the operations are same, just the titles and names are different. Same thing I'll be doing here. I will be creating name selection. I'll be giving the name selection as outlet for this phase. I'd be giving the final phase, that is the wall phase, and I will be defining it as wall. Now this point, my name selection will be shown at the in the outline as inlet, outlet, and wall. And if I click on in the right section of the outline, if I click on wall, it will show it in red. It will represent that this particular surface is named as wall, and it's like history and its things are mentioned over here, like what you can check actually the color coding, etc. The representation. Now comes part where you have the most important part after you are done with your mesh is updating your mesh after creating your name selections. Why we need to do that is because when your fluid detects inlet, outlet, and wall and all these name selections, it detects that inlet, outlet, and wall are applied or applicable to fluid flows. That means whatever domain that I have in front of me is a fluid domain. And when you update your mesh with name selections, it will automatically update the nature of this model from solid to fluid. And all of the translations will be done to fluid from from this point itself, so that you don't have to manually change the nature of this model to fluid. So that you can either right click, or you can see at the top here there is an update option where you have to click the update option, and then sometimes you'd see this information pop up. So this is information pop-up is also called as messages box that I have shown you in the ANSYS Mechanical, right? ANSYS Workbench. Same messages box is carried forward to all of these different models or different components. Here it's hidden from my sake. I have just hidden it, but you can see eventually a pop-up coming up. As this is a positive pop-up, that means there is no warning or something. It shows me that the mesh translation to Fluent is successful. That means that my solid model or my meshed model, my divided elements are now fluid components. So even if I double click that, you'll be seeing in detail the info and warning. So here you'll be seeing the warning that all cell zones in Fluent may be automatically set to fluid. The reason is simple, because I've defined that accordingly, right? Now coming to the next part. Now after exiting the mesh, I'll just close the mesh from here from this point onwards, and now my mesh is also showing a green tick, right? And now my setup is showing the refresh button. So this is how it generally goes. This is the flow of the analysis goes. Now right click, edit, and your setup will open where your linked geometry in mesh will be connecting. So before you move to the setup part, you would have this pop-up which basically shows you to choose either of the options. So one is it will show the dimensions, it will show the nature of the model. It's 3D, it's pre-selected, and it's not changeable because it's taken from the reference of the geometry and mesh. Second thing, there are different display options that are mentioned, like display mesh after reading, workbench color scheme, and all. Also, the main option that you are going to work on, or you are going to always have to click, is double precision. That means all of the iterations or all of the settings that you are going to apply are checked with double precision, and all of the iterations will be done using double precision. That's why your processing option should be double precision, and that's why your option should be double precision. And in your processing options, you will have two types of options, like one is a serial option, one is a parallel option. So in this option, you would select either serial, either parallel. For simpler simulations, you would select serial. For parallels, for heavy operations, you would select parallel. This generally depends on the extent of your computer system. How many number of cores do you have in your computer system? Like if your system is of 8 cores, is of 16 cores, is of 32 cores, or 4 cores, like quad core, octa core. Based on that, based on your computer or system specification, you can choose either one. So here I'll be choosing parallel. So here I guess I'll be using serial only, or no, I'll be using parallel, and I'll be changing the processes to number of processes as 4, because my simulation has my system has actually 4 core. Quad core system is I have, so I'll be using 4 cores for parallel simulation, and click OK. When I click OK, it will show me this system GUI. It's still loading. Now, after loading completed, you'd see this GUI for your system setup physics. Here you will have a lot of parameters that are to be taken care of. That is there is general models, materials, cell zone conditions, boundary conditions, or the dynamic mesh and reference values I won't be covering. Solution in solution methods, how you can change methods. Controls is the advanced part. Report definition monitors is the advanced part. Again, then you would be seeing the initialization. Then we'll go for the run calculation, and we'll actually compute for the certain amount of iterations. So let's see how step by step we apply these conditions, and how it means in the sense of your laminar flow simulation, right? So in general scale, you would see, I guess let me just fast forward it to here. Yeah, in general, you would see mesh check options like scale, check, report quality, display. Here you can check your mesh quality. Here you can check your aspect ratio. So these two terms are advanced. Once you're getting the hang of it, you'd start slowly learning from it, and you'll be able to understand those pretty much quickly. So as we have a time limit, I won't be talking about these details in this session, but in tomorrow's session, I would give you some small context of things in regards to our tomorrow's simulation.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Herman, for your wonderful speech. And on behalf of UCSI University, we would appreciate all your talks, all your effort for this evening. And so for now, we would open the Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions, you can just message to the chat box, or you can open your mic and speak up. So guys, please, if you have any questions, you can ask quickly, because we have to end very soon the session. Thank you.
So before we start with the doubt session, I just wanted to mention a small thing. As the session is ended abruptly, I will be discussing about this part in tomorrow's session at start, and based on the speed, I'll be actually regulating, and I'll be wrapping up our tomorrow's session as desired timing. So you up until now, what you have actually learned through this session, if you have any doubts, any questions, you can ask.
Okay, so there's one question from the chat box. How does ANSYS compare to SolidWorks and AutoCAD? That's one question.
So the files are to be converted to CFD compatible. So basically, the .CAD product or files that are there for SolidWorks and so for CATIA, you have to convert it into .stp or .igs format files. There is an option in all those softwares to export these files as this extension, and with this extension, they become CFD compatible, and then you can import it in your geometry. So when in your geometry cell, you can import the geometry. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Hello.
Yeah, I hope it answers the question that you just spoke. And okay, guys. So for now, I would request everyone to open your webcams for together screenshot for the attendance. So if you guys can open your webcams, we'll be grateful. It's just a short. Okay, guys, hurry up, please. Please, guys, open your webcam if you have. I'll take a quick screenshot. Okay. Meanwhile, waiting. We have posted the Google form in the chat box for your attendance. So everyone, request everyone to fill in the Google form after you have before you leave the session. Guys, is that all? I think there are more people to open their webcam, and there's only a few on the screen right now. Come on, guys, please, just for a while. Okay, I think yeah, you guys can close your webcam. Okay, and I have few information I would like to share with you all. Okay, regarding the EALE points, this is particularly for the UCSI students. So in order to obtain your EALE points, you have to attend all the 6 days of the event. If you miss one of the days, also you won't be getting the points. So be reminded on that. And for all the participants, regarding the e-certificate we will be providing. So if you complete the session, which is today and tomorrow, then only you'll be obtaining the certificate for this topic, and so on and so forth for the next topic as well. So you have to uh, attend the 2 sessions as well to get your e-certificate. And if you guys don't have any other questions, we can wrap it up over here. And also on behalf of UCSI University Student Chapter of IMechE, we would like to apologize to all the participants for changing the speaker at last minute. Initially, it's supposed to be another speaker speaking about automotive engineering, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we have to change the speaker. So I hope you understand, and I think that's all from me. And I really thank Mr. Herman for his time and his efforts. And if you guys don't have any other questions, you can please don't forget to answer the forms in the Google chat, and you may leave after that. And thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you on behalf of ETG. Thank you very much for welcoming me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Have a nice day too.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, and see you all tomorrow.